Hello, my name is Andreina.
And my name is Gabriela, and this is Wicks and Candles, a podcast about two sisters and their obsession with period film.
We want to dig into our favorite films and review them. Find out why we love them, how they shaped us, what effect do they have on us.
Join us on a trip through palaces and manors, balls and tea parties, and a lot of dresses, carriages, and of course, wicks and candles.
Welcome to Season 2 of the podcast. In this episode, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So today we're discussing a film about a love story between two women in the 18th century.
Yes, very fascinating. And this is not the only aspect that makes this film unusual, not only in the genre of period films, but in general. But we'll get to that later, Nene.
Indeed. So let's start with the easy part, the movie facts. Gabi, can you give us some of the most important infos on the movie?
Sure, Nene. So this film is from 2019. It was written and directed by Céline Sciamma, and it stars two renowned French actresses, Noémie Merlan and Adèle Haenel. In 2019, this film was a huge success, and it was selected to compete for the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. And it didn't win it, but it won for Best Screenplay in Cannes. And also, Nene, what I also find very interesting, it won the Queer Palm at Cannes. So what is the Queer Palm? It's the award for films that treat LGBTQ topics, yeah? And this film won in 2019. So the award was given to Céline Sciamma, and she is the first woman awarded the Queer Palms since the award exists, so since 2010. So this is, I think, also an aspect that makes this kind of, adds it on top. Why is this film so special? Apart from that, it was nominated for the Golden Globe Awards for Best Foreign Language. And Claire Maton, the cinematographer, was nominated in many different festivals and awards for Best Cinematography. And out of a few, she won the César and the New York Film Critics Circle Awards. So maybe with those hints, you can already have an idea of how it was received by the critics, apart from the audience, of course. So those are the hard facts, Nene. Would you guide us through the plot shortly?
Well, thank you, Gabi. The plot itself is actually quite simple. It's 1770 in Brittany, France. Marianne, a painter, is commissioned to do a portrait of a young woman, Héloïse. The portrait will serve as the introduction card of Héloïse to her future husband, an aristocrat who lives in Milan, Italy. Marianne is hired to paint Héloïse in hiding, as the last painter failed to complete the portrait. In the process, Marianne, Héloïse, and a young servant, Sophie, will form a uniquely female triangle and form the basis of an intense yet tender love story. So, Gabi, this is quite an unusual movie, and both of us were very impressed by the movie. So much so that we decided that the regular structure that we use for our podcast didn't really fit what this movie has to offer. So we decided to change our structure a little bit, sort of to be able to discuss the the main topics that that struck us when we were watching this movie. So one of the first things that we wanted to talk about, and you mentioned it briefly when you were talking about the movie facts, is that this movie is directed by a woman. Is Céline Sciamma. She's a female director, and you also mentioned that she was the first woman to win the Queer Palm in Cannes in 10 years. So what do you think about Céline Sciamma, and how does the fact that she directed this movie and wrote it impacts what we see on the screen?
Nene, it is quite fascinating, because this is like kind of opening the door just slightly to a huge and wide spectrum of variety of depths that we could talk about. Yeah. I have to say, as a woman, I am rarely confronted with productions written and directed by women. So, of course, I was viewing the film or watching the film with a lot of attention, to kind of trying to identify how a woman does a film differently. Yeah. Do I really get it? What women can make differently on a film? We have talked about a female director in the past in our podcast, the director of Belle. And we were also very impressed about the way she took the story and portrayed the characters, and which finesse she used to tell the story. But of course, it's one film out of 5, out of 10. And here again, I have a film out of many. So of course, I throw a very careful look at how a woman writes and directs a film. Yeah. And it is quite astonishing how much of a difference it can make. Yeah. Many things that have been said about this film turn around the term female gaze.
Yeah.
Yeah. This look, this staring look of a woman. Yeah. And it is absolutely not to oversee it. You cannot oversee this female touch through the entire story and through the entire film. So I think it is very worth mentioning it. This is the work of a woman who wants to portray women and wants to tell the story from a woman's point of view. And I know very little about Céline Sciamma's previous work, so I can only judge this film. But as I said, for me, it was absolutely not to oversee what kind of a touch and what kind of an imprint she left on the film. How about you? Because you have much more experience watching films, and you certainly have a lot of references, maybe not within the period film genre, but did you also feel it? Like, did you also recognize this female touch on the film?
Well, yeah. Thank you for that, Gary. Yeah, I mean, it's 2021, and it's becoming easier and easier to find movies either written or directed by women. However, women still make up a very small percentage of all the movies released in theaters, at least in the US. I suspect it might be better in France and in Europe, but in North America, the percentage of movies that make it to the big budget movies that make it to the theaters, female directors are still a tiny percentage. And women have shown that they can direct and write and make any kind of movie. In fact, the first female director to win an Oscar was Catherine Bigelow, and she won it in 2008, and it was The Hurt Locker, which is a movie about war. It is an action film. So for this particular movie, The Portrait of a Lady on Fire, it's not so much that Céline Sciamma is a female director, but I think it's the intentionality behind her writing and her directing. I think she was very intentional in making sure that this story showed a female perspective, which is probably not what Catherine Bigelow was doing with The Hurt Locker. In The Hurt Locker, she just wanted to direct an action film. But I think with Céline Sciamma, we have a completely different
motivation.
Céline Sciamma, as we learned while we were researching for this episode, we learned that she's a feminist artist. All her work is political, and she's very clear about it. She's very clear that she will direct stories that show her feminist perspective. So it is not is not an exception with this movie, and I think it impacts in every respect what we see on the screen in this movie. All of her choices. It's very interesting that this movie is not adapted from a book or from a play or anything. This is a brand new story that she wrote and that she very specifically decided to set in the late 18th century. The fact that a lot of the critics and the public and all the conversation around this movie was about the female gaze, it was because Céline Sciamma herself very intentionally set out to do a movie that will show this.
So she succeeded on that. She absolutely succeeded. And the nice thing about it is, nowadays to kind of make it on headlines, either it's a singer or a performer or a band or an actor or whatever, they want to kind of provoke and they want the attention and so on for a certain cause. Yeah. Often independently of the message, but she made it so smart that she got the attention and she had a very clever message behind it, not just because she wanted to get the attention. You look at me, I'm a woman and I'm making a film, because this message, what you just mentioned, this political intention is very clearly packed in the film. It's not just like a surface saying, okay, I am here, I'm the female actor, a director who wants to, cause some headlines within the film industry. She has a clear message and she got it very cleverly through. She used the stage, to kind of give it even more, to spread it even bigger. What she really wanted to say.
I think it's just she's a serious artist. Period. I mean, I think she's a serious film director, and she's just looking to make the films that appeal to her as an artist, right? As a writer, as a director. So there's I don't believe, any desire to provoke or anything like that. She just wrote this movie for a specific audience with a specific group of people in her mind, because this is not only a movie about a love story. It's a love story between two women in a different period in the 18th century. So it's a LGBTQ plus. It's a queer film. So she definitely wanted to show a love story that was from that very specific perspective. So now that we have talked about this, Gabby, why don't we actually move on to talking about the female relationships in the movie? Because the movie, as we said, it focuses on just a very small group of characters, and all of the characters are female, with the exception of some extras, which are men. But they are just extras. They do not play any speaking role or have no role at all.
This I found so refreshing.
Tell me about it.
I don't want to complain, because I'm a happy person and I love films who tell a good story. So I'm not purposely looking for the feminist film on theaters right now. But as I said, just watching this film and just seeing a mainly female story, just women taking the main stage and men just playing like a background role, I found it very refreshing. Somehow, like in a trusted circle.
Wow. You felt like you were in a trusted circle.
Like in a trusted circle. As a woman, I was like, yes, I know this. I know female surroundings, pure female surroundings. I mean,
Oh,
we are three sisters, so our
yes.
household was already very female. And we
Yes.
have a lot of cousins. So we have a lot of women around us, and we have a lot of aunts. And I went to an only girls' school. So all this entire female surrounding, female circle, it felt like very familiar to me. And I said, something like where you can see this fits everything. There's nothing missing for a while, that
Wow.
men play like a secondary role. It's like, this feels like kind of nice for a
Wow.
change.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said when you felt you felt like you were in a trusted circle while watching the movie. And I absolutely think that is the effect that the movie has on a female viewer or any female identifying viewer. Because like we said, the movie has 3 or 4 main characters. We have Marianne, the painter, Eloise, who's gonna be the painted, the person who's gonna be painted,
The object of the painting.
the object of the painting. We have Sophie, the servant, and we have Eloise's mom, the countess. I think she is a countess, who's played by the amazing Valeria Golino. And those are the main characters in the movie. At a certain point, after the countess has given Marianne the commission and say you have to paint her without her realizing that you're painting her, she says I have to leave for a week. So essentially, when she leaves, we have a household, which is a big house in the coast of Brittany, with these 3 women inhabitants. So we have this very intimate circle of women. And essentially we just watch what happens in those 5 days of that intimacy between those 3 women. And in a previous discussion about the movie, we were discussing what we loved about it. We mentioned how equal that relationship was as soon as the countess left, because the countess is still a symbol of the patriarchy. She still is the mother who's trying to marry her daughter, and using this portrait as the introduction, right? But as soon as she leaves, we have these 3 women who are of completely different class status, right? Marianne is a working painter, an artist. Eloise is an aristocratic young woman who's going to be married off. And then we have Sophie, who is just a servant, born in a rural town, and that's it. But immediately, the relationship that settles between the 3 of them is of complete and total equal status. They sit together, they eat together, they move about the house without any hierarchy between them.
Totally.
And what that word about the trusted circle, absolutely, that's what I felt. I mean, this is familiar, this is comfortable, this is safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what you mentioned in it, that between them, this hierarchy or these classes, these levels, they fell off, between them. And what really connected them was mainly this. We are 3 women with 3 very different destinies. Yeah, we are dealing with 3 very different, kinds of paths in life.
Yes.
But we are together in this, and and somehow together we are strong. Together as women, we can support each other with, as I said, Sophie's destiny, which was not an easy one. We learn in the story that Sophie, the servant, has become pregnant, and she actually is very young, and she doesn't want to carry the baby. So she has a very tough card in her hand.
Yes.
Then we see Eloise, who's also faced with this future of marrying a stranger.
Yeah.
And then we have a rather independent Marianne. So very different backgrounds, and still they gather on the same level, as you said, at the same table, and they drop all of this. And what unites them is this sorority, this sisterhood. Yes. We're women, and we deal with this together. Whatever you're going through, even though they don't really say it, it's not explicit how they say it, but through this gaze, okay, the one which mentioned, through this gaze and through their gestures and how they just behave with each other, they implicitly acknowledge the other one as we're equals, and you're a woman and common sister. We're together in this. We get through this.
Yeah, and it's quite uncomplicated. Like there was no, like in the story as written by Céline Sciamma, there is no conflict about this. There's absolutely no conflict. These are three women in the house, and each has their role, and there is absolutely no complication about it. I mean, they sit in the same table, they eat, they play cards. They read a book together. They spend time together. There's actually there's nothing that had to be undone about the relationship between the three. So essentially, the movie is quite intimate, and because there's so few characters, all the scenes are either Mariano Eloise, or Eloise and Sophie, or Sophie and Marianne. So there's like a lot of kind of like tableau, like almost painting like scenes and frames. So this kind of enhances that feeling of, they're very intimate in this space. This space is very feminine, and it feels very real. It is quite. I think it's one of the most striking things about this movie to me. That feeling of sisterhood.
Totally.
Yeah, especially when Sophie. Like you said, she's pregnant and she doesn't want to carry the pregnancy, and without saying or asking any questions, Marianne and Eloise set about helping her. And there's a number of scenes where we see them, trying to perform the abortion,
yes.
or and to access the knowledge of the wise woman or the healer in the town to help her. And it's all the knowledge that is passed through women, the conversation that is passed through women, that is all conveyed very well, that this is all ancient knowledge that has been passed down through generations, women to women, mother to daughter, daughter to grandmother to daughter. And this knowledge of how do we deal with this situation, you feel it's sort of like you could be witnessing today, 1770, or, the year 1000.
Totally.
It will be the same.
And what you mentioned then is so uncomplicated because they didn't really ask each other for help. Yeah, let's take this example of Sophie's situation. Yeah, she didn't really ask for help. For them, it was like, it was clear, absolutely clear. Oh, you're going through this? Okay, hold on. I have some remedies. Yes. I have some ideas. Let's try it, And they were on it. The three of them, they went completely for it, and they tried everything. They didn't ask any questions. They didn't question Sophie, why did you put yourself in this situation or whatever. No morality, nothing.
So the only question is, do you want it or not? Like, do you want to keep this baby?
Your decision. What is your
decision? What is your decision? But there was absolutely no judgment of how do like you said, how do you get in this situation, or what is your choice? It's absolutely, and you can see this is a situation that women have been faced with for the whole entire human existence, and it's been between women and among women that we have been able to go through these situations together, and this is how this knowledge is passed down. Absolutely brilliant in how Céline Sciamma portrays this particular plot line in the movie.
So Nene, talking about female relationships, there is one female relationship apart from the love relationship. We will come to that later. There is one relationship that is also very interesting to analyze shortly. And is this back and forth between Painter, Marianne, and the object of the painting of Eloise. And we see throughout the film, throughout the story, that it's like a ping pong. That it's not that these roles don't really stay like this throughout the entire film. What is your impression? What is your impression on that, on this relationship between being the painter and being the painted, between two women? What can you say about that?
Oh my God. There's so much to say here. And then that will take us to our next topic, which is art in the lives of women, that we wanted to touch on. But I think it's so beautifully written because to start, Marianne has a very hard job to do because she is supposed to paint Eloise without Eloise realizing it. Because the last painter couldn't. And why he couldn't finish the portrait? Because Eloise wouldn't sit for him. Why? Because the painting was for her future husband. So she refused to be an object for a portrait because that will mean she's accepting the marriage. Here she is in the same exact situation. Marianne has to paint her, and you can conflict within Marianne that she has to play this role. She is playing a part in this arranged marriage because she's painting the portrait that has been commissioned for this specific purpose. So it is not easy for her. Not only that, she has some conflict, not so much guilt, but she has a conflict within her that she has to observe. She has to observe Eloise during their walks outside, when she's eating. She has to observe her with the painter's eyes, without her realizing. So she's constantly looking at her hands, how she's posing her hands when she's sitting, how she's walking. She's wow, this is wonderful. She's as Eloise is just living, Marianne has to convert her into art on the spot in her mind. So she's transforming Eloise into a work of art in her mind, because it's only when she's able to get back to her room, right, with everything she has put in her mind, that she's able to quickly
sketch
and put into the canvas. So it is an extraordinarily intellectual I don't even know how to say this. Is just the pleasure of the intellectual power that went into to writing this movie is so profound. I cannot even express it, because the layers of meaning are so condensed. Like there's so many layers. It's beautiful. So at one point, spoilers. I think it's better that you watch this movie before you listen to this podcast. Spoiler alert: Eloise realizes that she's being painted, and that's when you say it's a ping
when they switch.
The tables are turned because Eloise is falling in love with Marianne, and Marianne as well. So this becomes more of a game. Before, like, look at me, paint me. Like, what do you see? What do you want from me? In my smile, in my hands, it becomes very erotic, and it becomes really, really beautiful and really powerful, because now there's consent.
There's consent, and there's an interpretation. She's not a stranger object.
Yes.
That she has to just kind of replicate.
No.
She has to put her views. Or so it's becoming a subject, and how Eloise kind of took how can I say it? She took kind of the power sometimes, and she put Marianne like, now I am asking you, requesting you to give your best, Now I know what you're doing. So there's a little kind of power unbalance. First was Marianne saying, okay, you have to sit and so on. She was, like kind of the commander. Sit nicely and so on. I am the painter. I know what I have to do. But then this balance is switched upside down, because then it's Eloise who says, show me what you can. Can you really see into me?
Oh, it is. It's so good.
It's so good.
There's no smart words to use. It's just so well written and so well done. I mean, what can we say? It's just very powerful and very well written. And I think it's because of that intention that Céline Sciamma had when she was writing the story and when she was shooting the movie and directing the movie. It is all about the gaze. It's about how we look at each other and how for the whole entirety of human history, women have to be observed and have been in that imbalanced power situation where you are just an object of this male gaze and you have no power in how you are represented and in what parts of you are represented to the world.
Yes.
Where here, the tables are completely turned. Well, not so much turned as a completely new table is set.
Yes.
A completely new way is set. It's like this smile is for another woman. This smile means something different. This smile is not for the pleasure of a man. The way I'm sitting and the way my hands are positioned is not for the pleasure of a man who's going to see them and think, these are my wife's hands. These are a woman's hands for herself and for her potential lover, who's another woman. So it is completely different. It is taking back the power as the subject of a painting.
Yes.
It is just the most extraordinary way of showing the power within women and between women and among women. And the fact that you chose painting it has great significance for the story.
Totally, Nene. And this is maybe a good transition for our next topic. Art. Let's talk about art. I have to say that I'm an art lover. I love art. I love a museum. I love classic art. So I love the great masters, beautiful paintings. I am moved to tears when I see beauty on a canvas.
Yes.
So the entire art topic surrounding and going through the entire story and through the film, of course, was for me like, okay, she got me hooked right away because it was about art. So what is your impression? What do you think was Céline Sciamma's intention, again, to take this topic, to take painting, to kind of be the driver of the story? And which role do you think women, because she had an intention, you mentioned that, she had an intention of picking the time, picking the location, and picking the type of art that Marianne was supposed to, the role of the figure of Marianne was supposed to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Gabby. And I am with you in terms of I do love painting and I do love the old masters and it's a topic that is endlessly fascinating for me. But Céline Sciamma herself has said it in different interviews and specifically during an interview at the Toronto Film Festival in 2019, she said, and I'm going to paraphrase, I'm not going to quote, but she said that she had picked the end of the 18th century for her movie because it was a very specific period of a very specific time period where female painters were thriving throughout Europe. And in France as well, there were many women painters who were earning their lives as painters. But, unfortunately, as we now know, their stories and their histories have been erased. Very few of them have made it to the history books. So that's why she picked this particular time period and showing that there were actually a lot of women, including Vigée Lebrun, who was the famous painter who did the most famous Marie Antoinette portraits, who were quite successful. But the other aspect, Gabi, that I found that was very interesting, and I don't know, you can tell me if you agree with me or not, is that, throughout our history, and you love the arts and you love our history, throughout our history, there's always been, what's considered the high arts and the lesser, minor arts. And this movie, because it's all about female spaces and female energy, shows both high art in what Marianne is doing. She's a painter, painting a portrait, but also the domestic arts. And both of them in the movie are giving kind of like the same loving look. They are both shot in the most loving, respectful way. So we have lots of scenes of Marianne painting, doing her painting, wonderful scenes where she's working in the canvas, sketching. But we also have some very lovely, lovely scenes of Sophie doing embroidery. Oh my God, those were like little paintings unto themselves because she's using this vase of flowers as her model, and she's embroidering, doing this wonderful embroidery, and is shot with such light. You could be looking at a Vermeer painting. It is just
Totally.
so beautiful. And here we are talking about women doing, working, being creative,
Being creative.
being creative, and being free to create without judgment. Oh, I think it's just absolutely fantastic.
Fantastic. And expressing, yeah, because this sensibility that Sophie is, conveying through the embroidery, yeah, with which care and thoughtfulness she looks at the flowers. The flowers even go, they die out, and she still leaves them on the vase, and she still works so carefully and to convey that beauty in the embroidery. It's a beautiful aspect what you mentioned, that this creativity that she gave the space of women could express the creativity, whatever it was, just like anonymous for posterity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, and I think we can move on to the other two topics that we want to talk about, and I think we can still gonna come back to this topic of art because it's unavoidable. It's part of the story of the movie. Yeah, so let's briefly talk about the film production. So we're talking about cinematography, costumes, lighting, the colors. What do you think about it?
Well, Nene, I think we have mentioned this maybe once or twice already in the time we've been talking about this film. Art is omnipresent. It's omnipresent through the entire film. And while going through the facts, we also heard Claire Maton won awards for her cinematography. And why is that? It's because the entire film looks like a painting. Each frame is just so beautifully composed, light, the entire composition of each frame. Maybe I'm repeating myself, but this entire combination of the character on the frame, the light, the background, either we see landscapes, you have this the rocky cliffs, you have the wild waves, the wind, is a rough landscape. And when Marianne and Eloise are out on their walks, they are the scenes, they are shot so carefully to put them exactly as part of the landscape. They would really belong to this landscape. There's nothing left to, casualty. It's just all so well thought and prepared and composed.
Yes.
So one thing are the landscapes, and I would love to hear your opinion on this. The house where they live. So the scenes that are filmed inside the house are also an incredible representation or an incredible ode to the great masters, to painting, because each room and each scene filmed in one of these rooms that are barely decorated,
Yeah.
they all look like a painting themselves. I'm just going to mention one, and maybe you let me know what you think. Maybe what is your impression of this inside, outside, indoors, outdoors framing? The kitchen. The kitchen scenes are most fascinating because main source of light is the chimney, the fire, where they cook. So we have a fire always coming from the back. It's a warm light. The table is very bare and it's always in the front. And there's pretty much nothing else. There's either one metal pot or one wooden plate, one fork, one knife, one piece of bread. It all looks like a still life.
Oh my God. Yes.
And then they complete this composition of a painting, of an inner painting, with the three women, or with one of the women, with Sophie. Yeah. So I think this, how carefully they set the scenes to kind of keep this part of this element of the entire story, art, throughout the entire, that they didn't really lose the continuity of what role art played in their lives.
It's all very, again, the word that comes to mind is intentional. It's all very carefully constructed to create a specific image, and I agree with you. It's just a extraordinary pleasure, like aesthetic pleasure that you get by watching this movie, because each frame is absolutely beautiful, and the care, you can see the care that has been put behind them. So absolutely, and I will add one more thing. A lot of, if we think about the hierarchy of painting at the time, still lifes, yes, they were important, but they were still considered lesser than, the historical paintings that were supposed to be huge, and they were supposed to depict historical moments in the history of a country, in the history of Europe, or the allegories where you have, biblical stories brought to life. And still paintings were domestic scenes. They were interior scenes. They often depict the lives of women inside. So once again, it's sort of like an honoring all these things that are domestic, that are interior, in the interior of houses inside. Absolutely a gorgeous way to show us again.
I totally agree.
But that this is the world of women. This is the world that women are, most women were inhabiting, which is inside the home. I think before we move on to the final topic, which is the love story, I want to briefly mention, and I want your opinion on this, the costumes. Again, very intentional. We only have like 3-4 costumes, and I just have to say that one of my favorite things in the entire movie, and people might think, wow, this is not the most typical period film where you have a lot of frills and a lot of balls. There's not one ball in this movie.
There's no wigs. Nearly no wigs at the end. A few weeks.
It's like, there's like a couple of weeks at the end. But what we see in this movie is working clothes. Everyday working clothes. And for me, that was one of the most fascinating aspects of the costumes in this movie, and specifically the dress that Marianne wears. It's just like a rough fabric, and it's an everyday dress. And I love the details of the shift and the stay and her petticoats, and they come off and on often because she's in her room getting dressed to paint or to go outside, and just the realism. The realism of this clothes was just absolutely fascinating to me, because I could imagine, I'm always very selfish, I just could imagine myself putting on my clothes on, in the morning, because I'm going to do my things, my domestic tasks for the day. So I really love that.
We have to admit, one of the things that we love the most when we are period film lovers, and one of the things that attract us the most about a period film, so of course this fantasy, this fantasy of how would it feel to go along, walk around with such a dress, how would I feel really ladylike or whatever? I don't know what goes through your mind. How would it feel, or when you say working clothes, how would I feel towards work if I had to wear a petticoat or a corset? How would my standing change if I wore such a dress? This fantasy goes through through our heads definitely, when I see a dress. Nene, and what you said is realism. It's very authentic. It feels so authentic, because they have very close-ups and you see the fibers of the fabrics.
Yes.
And you really feel like you could touch it and you would know how it feels to the touch, these dresses.
Yeah, the weight. The weight of the clothes.
Yeah, the weight of the clothes.
The weight of
Absolutely
the clothes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And of course, this is an element that makes it all very mysterious. The entire film has such a kind of mysterious touch. The fact that they wear so little dresses, it's like a repeating element, It plays a secondary. They're beautiful in themselves, but it plays a secondary role, When you only give you this one dress to admire.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, Sophie has one dress with her apron. Marianne has her painting clothes, and she goes out. And there's a couple dresses that Eloise wears. One for the painting, and one that's her
blue one.
Yeah. In fact, one thing that is very interesting is that there's a little accident that happened in one of the most striking scenes in which her dress catches fire, and then you see the dress with the burn. Like after that, and like she's still wearing it with the burnt skirt. Very interesting. You can kind of feel the lives. You can feel the weight of these clothes. But I think we should wrap it up and also wrap it up. This is the last topic that we want to touch for this movie, which is a love story, which is the main story of the movie. It's a love story between Marianne and Eloise. So what do you think about how was this portrayed, Gabby?
Wow, Nene, this is a big question. I don't know. I feel ill-equipped. It is fascinating. I already outed myself at the beginning. I haven't really seen many films with love stories between two men or between two women. So same-sex love stories. I haven't been confronted with many stories, so I have to kind of admit my ignorance in this respect.
Okay.
So of course I was like, okay, I was like expectant of myself. How will I feel about a love story between two women?
Yeah.
And I found it's such a sensitive love story. It's so, it's, very delicate to the touch.
Yes,
it's nothing like they're not jumping at each other. And, they're not like, I don't know, it's so subtle, it's so sensitive.
Yeah, subtle. Yeah, very subtle.
So subtle. So that for me was like, kind of like, exactly, this is maybe how women love. I don't know, maybe I'm throwing too many cliches here. But I can imagine that between women, love maybe differently between a woman and a man. I don't know. So I found it very subtle, this relationship. And what we mentioned before, this equality, that they really for each other's, they really fell for each other's soul.
Yeah.
That they were really going through this. They went all through the, what is magnetic about this person? What is she giving me through her gestures, through her attitude, and so on? Of course, there's beauty playing a big role between them. We cannot oversee this. This is two amazingly beautiful women. Yeah. But for me, it felt like, yes, this is different. This love between these two women is different than the love between a man and a woman. It feels different.
Yeah.
To me as a viewer.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that it's very subtle. And I think one of the things that makes it so interesting is that once you set a movie in a different time period, you are subjected to the period's society rules, conventions, right? So you have to write those in the story. So Céline Sciamma had to write in all those restrictions that society might have had on women, and on top of that on lesbians. So double the burden, right? On top of that, she chose to set her story in the 18th century, so there you have to put in the clothes that changes completely how women are dressed, how they move, what parts of their bodies they can see of each other. So it's all very much on the face, the hands, their gestures, their conversation, the parts of the body that they can see of each other, which is the hands. And of course, the whole layer of being the painter and the subject of the painter and so on brings another layer of erotic energy to the whole thing. So by the time they declare their love to each other, you have built this whole lot of tension, and wonderful, erotic energy between them, because it's a long process for them to kind of, say, not even say it, just to show to each other that they love each other. And then after that, you have more, not even explicit. There's no explicit love scene in this movie. No explicit love scene. They are nude. There are love scenes, but it's mainly kissing. And there's one very interesting scene involving fingers under an armpit. So it's all very suggestive, more than explicit. And I think this is very much a woman assuming power. And why do I say this? Because throughout history, women being observed by men, there's a particular way in which women are portrayed by men as sexual objects. Whatever is titillating for them, whatever they find sexually attractive or sensual. Where here, saying, this is what I find attractive about myself. This is me feeling sensual for myself, because you are another woman. So it's just like myself, a mirror of myself. So it's taking the power back, taking that power back to, this is what I find most sensual. This is what I found. And sexuality between two women can be as hardcore, can be as, even including, violence, etc. However, when you take back that power, you've established some sort of level playing field. There's a tenderness, there's a trust.
This is maybe a good transition to wrap it up, Nelly. This has been a very passionate discussion. Let me know, please. How many wicks and candles do you give the portrait of a lady on fire?
This is a very hard rating, because this movie is a masterpiece. There's no question about it. This is an extraordinary film that deserves to be seen and deserves to be studied on many, many levels. However, is it a movie for a period film lover? I'm not sure. So if I were to rate this movie as a wicks and candles movie, a period film, I will not give it a 10. I will probably give it a 9, because it offers few of the period film pleasures that people have come to expect, like witty conversations and balls and fun love stories and so on. More like in the Jane Austen style of period film. However, if I were to rate this just as a movie that shows me the lives of women at a specific period of time, I give it a 10, because it gives me a glimpse into the normal lives of women in a very specific situation. And this is a pretty spectacular movie from beginning to end. So I'll give it a 10, just rating it as a movie, just as a movie. Extraordinary work by Céline Sciamma and all the actors and cinematographer, etc.
Excellent, Nene.
What about
I guess you touched a very important point. How do you classify, if at all, how do you classify this this film, because it is an unusual film, and this is how we started out the conversation. It is an unusual film by the choice of story, few characters, only women, painting, the frames, composition, lights, everything. It's all unusual. This is not a typical film. And what you mentioned, the period film lover, does he or she find what he or she expects in this film? Well, obviously not. However, I have to disagree with something. When I watch a period film, I want to be transported to another time, and we know this. We agree on this.
Oh yeah, we agree
core on this core of why do we love and why are we so obsessed about a period film? And this conveys this film conveys that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get transported to this time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a piece of art. I guess on all the hard facts, it definitely gets a 10 from my side. And maybe I would just definitely go for a 9. Maybe I'm being unfair, but because the love scenes for me were a little bit cliche, kind of, there were nothing like. Everything was so beautifully orchestrated. They kiss in this cave, they take a walk, and then they go into this cave, and they titillate, and first they also hesitate. Are we really ready for this? And then they are wrapped with a scarf because it's very windy, and then they take down the scarf. This moment was so special and so magical. That means it maybe why the love scenes were. I had too high expectations. The love films would be celestial, and they were kind of like totally normal. So maybe this is, they kind of let me down because I was like in another stratosphere.
Yes. Yeah. I see what you mean. I absolutely see what you mean. They brought you back down.
They brought me too fast down to reality. Yeah. So this is really it's a very subjective. It's a very personal aspect that I'm rating here. So this is maybe where I say I'm being unfair, but I'm going to stick to my 9. I'm going to stick to my 9 because it is an unforgettable film. And for art lovers, it has to be a must. For period films, a beautiful and exciting expedition to another branch of the genre.
Yes, absolutely. Well, well said, Gabby. Well said. Here you have it. There you have it. 19 Wicks and Candles for Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It's a masterpiece just on itself, but also an extraordinary look at a specific period of time and the lives of women at that time. So, Gabby, what an amazing conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nene, for your inspiration.
Yeah, well, thank you everybody for listening, and welcome back to season 2, and we'll talk to you soon.
Stay tuned.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wicks and Candles is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher.
So go ahead and subscribe and follow us on Instagram at Wicks and Candles. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Wicks and Candles is written, hosted, and produced by Andreina Romero and Gabriela Morken Romero. The image design is by Pamela Rollin. The podcast theme music is the Concerto for 2 Violins in D minor by Johann Sebastian Bach.